listening to the Kyle Mackey Podcast. Let's get this show started. Do you ever feel like you're constantly trying to manage everybody else's moods, their decisions, their opinions, only to end up exhausted and frustrated? What if I told you there was a simple way to reclaim energy and find more peace? Well, thanks to Mel Robbins and the Let Them theory, and a gift I received from my friend Neha, we have a solution, and it's called the Let Them theory. So for those of you who are not aware of who Mel Robbins is, she's a New York Times bestselling author known for practical, life-changing advice. And the Let Them theory is a simple yet extremely profound tool for transforming relationships and personal well-being. Now, the overall concept or idea of the Let Them theory is that us as people, we waste immense energy trying to control what others think, say, and do, which ultimately is an impossible task. On this planet, there's really only one thing we have control over, and it's ourselves. You can't get people to change if they don't want to change. You can't control the environment around you. But what you can control is everything within you. So the solution to this problem is it's quite simple, and it has two parts of this framework. There's the let them. There's also let me. Let them is releasing the need to control others. Again, it's something that you can try as much as you want. You can waste as much time and energy on it, and you might never get the result you're going after. So releasing that need to control others will help you take more control over yourself. And then there's the let me part of this, which is taking responsibility for your own thoughts and actions. When it comes to letting me take control of all the things that I have control over, it empowers you to live a much better life. When it comes to this concept, I'm not perfect by any means. And again, this framework is rather new to me. But there is a concept behind this which has actually helped me get to where I am today. I definitely have areas in my life where I do let other people impact me too much. But one of the things that I've been most successful at is in my career when it comes to sales. And I think one of the things that sets me apart from other people who've tried sales is that I truly believe every single person I interact with, the result is all based off the belief that if they don't, buy, it's because of me. It's not because of something that they're dealing with. It's because of me. Because when I empower myself and believe that I had control in the situation, it means I have a way of improving for the next time. If I didn't get somebody to take the purchase, I can look at it from that, outward perspective and think, what tools or what new things can I learn which will help me in that next scenario? Because it's not that they didn't want to buy, it's that I just didn't get them to see the value behind it, which is something that I did wrong. And so by taking that perspective, I then have the power to put myself in a better situation for future encounters. Now, for those of you who are not aware of who Mel Robbins is, again, she is a best-selling author, but she's had her own personal struggles for sure. She dealt a lot with debt, unemployment, a variety of other things which we'll talk through this podcast. But her earlier book, The 5-Second Rule, is sort of the precursor to understanding self-control. And although I've never read the book, I do understand the general premise of what that book is about. So the 5-second rule, from my understanding, is about just increasing your self-control. Essentially, when there's something that comes up and you don't want to do it, count to 5 and just do it. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take action. When you get in the habit of every time you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take action, it starts to help you see just how in control you can be. You know, when the alarm goes off and you're like, oh, I just want to hit snooze. Nah. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get up out of bed, turn off the alarm. So that's where this all came from. But there's more to life than just yourself, because unfortunately we have a lot of relationships. We have a lot of external interactions. And that's what the let them theory is about. It's about the external interactions that we go through on a daily basis. So today, in today's podcast, we're going to go a deep dive into Mel Robbins' let them theory. We'll break down the core frameworks. We'll explore how it's applied to friendships and intimate relationships. And we'll discuss navigating endings. Finally, how to make the shift to internal control for a more empowering life. So to start this off, let's go over the let them, let me framework. So what the let them principle ultimately does, it helps release control. At its core, the let them theory is about giving others the freedom to be themselves. Their choices, their opinions, their moods are theirs. They're not yours to manage. We need to get it out of our head that we can impact people in that sort of way and that we can change people, because you ultimately can't. The only time anybody's going to change is when they want to. The only time people are going to do something is when they want to. The only time people are going to, get into a better mood is when they're prepared to do so. You can keep on trying. But until they're ready, nothing's going to change. When you start to realize that you can't control other people, what it does, it actually starts reducing your stress. It frees up your energy. It leads to peace by accepting that you can't control others. There are so many instances which you can look at where if you start to realize that you just can't control other people, it can start to have a positive impact on your life, especially once you add the let me part of this whole theory to it. We've all, worked in an environment where there's going to be some grumpy coworkers. Instead of letting it affect you or trying to fix it, what the best option is just say, let them be grumpy, and to focus on your own work and your state. When I lived in Canada and I worked in hospitality, this was a very common thing across the board. I think every single restaurant I worked at, there was always some really miserable people, but there was always some really lovely people too. But if I focused my attention on the grumpy managers, it actually makes me do my job worse, which then ultimately means I'm going to get less of a tip, because that's how you make your money in Canada in the service industry, is from the tips that you get from providing good service. So if I focus on the grumpy manager and not the lovely customers I have in front of me, ultimately it's going to negatively impact me on the economic side of things. Another example of this is, when your parents criticize your life choices, let them have their opinions. They're always going to have their opinions. You're probably not even going to change their opinions. But what it doesn't change is your reality or your right to choose. I have lovely parents, love them immensely, but I'm very confident they would have been much happier if I would have stayed closer to home. They would have loved to be able to see me on a regular basis, not just every couple of years. They also probably be happy if I didn't start my own business because it's more risky. They'd be happy if I just had a career where I had a steady income. And honestly, there were times where it was extremely stressful. And my parents had to deal with the repercussions of that a little bit because, I went to them for that emotional support. But again, if I think about just doing what my parents want me to do, I wouldn't have had all these experiences I've had in my life. I wouldn't have started these businesses. I have to do what's right for me. And then I'm sure we've all had this before. You have your friends go on a trip and you're not invited. That's okay. Let them go on that trip. Let them enjoy that trip. Their plans are not a reflection of your worth. I've definitely had this at times. I spent a lot of my earlier years traveling around the world. And as a result, I didn't keep as close a contact with my group of friends from Canada as I probably should have. And there were times where I noticed, some of these people went on trips and I wasn't invited. But that's okay. I didn't invite them on trips that I was going on. So I shouldn't feel like they owe it to me to invite me on every trip. Let them enjoy that trip. I hope it's the best trip of their lives. Again, it has no impact on me. If I want to go on trips with them, I should take that action. Now, the second part of this principle is the let me part, the let me principle, which is all about reclaiming your power. Let me is a crucial step. After from detaching control of others, you focus on what you will do, what you will think, what you will say next. This is where your true agency lies. Again, we can't control other people. The only thing we can control is ourselves. We can control what we do, what we think, what we say. All of this is in our control, and it will always be in our control. Now, the benefits of realizing this is that it empowers you to act constructively, foster self-awareness, and allows you to take responsibility for your own happiness and outcomes. When all the happiness in the world is a result of you and not others, not your friends, not your relationships, not your family. When it's a result of you and the actions you take and the thoughts you have, that's a pretty beautiful thing. Because it means no matter what situation you are in your life, you can always put yourself in an environment you want to be. Now, sort of an analogy of this that is used in the book is this seesaw analogy. If you just use one of these scenarios where you let them or you let me and you don't encompass it together, it's not a great situation. If you only use the let them theory, it puts you up high on the seesaw. It makes you feel superior, but isolated. We don't want to feel isolated. Let me brings it back down to balance. It lets you reflect on the parts that you have control of, and it lets you choose your response. If you're really high on a seesaw and you're stuck there, when you were a kid and somebody was just on the other side, just sitting there because they weighed, an extra 50 pounds over you, it's not a lot of fun. But if you're at the bottom doing the exact opposite, it's also not a lot of fun. But when you can get somewhere in the balance and you have that up and down motion a little bit, it's a lot more fun. So we want to balance these two. We want to balance letting them and letting me. Because when you do that, it brings balance to this whole theory. And it's going to give you a much better quality of life. An example of let me in action is, for example, when you're at a grocery store and the line is incredibly slow. Let the line be slow. You're not going to change it. If you got a slow cashier, She's not going to speed up because she sees that you're grumpy. If anything, she's probably going to want to slow that shit down because she does not want to serve you. She wants you to stay as far away or hopes that you switch lines because she doesn't want you to scream or yell at her. But what you can do in that moment is you can take a moment to breathe. You're going to be stuck there for 5 minutes maybe. So maybe check some emails. Maybe respond to some messages that you've been meaning to respond to. Maybe pull out YouTube and watch a funny video. Have a laugh. Imagine in a line where you're about to get pissed off. Instead of that, you have a little laugh. Wow. Now you're like, I'm grateful that I had that 5 minutes stuck in that line. So don't get agitated. Protect your peace. That's what this is all about. It's about controlling what you have control over. And in this case, you're going to be in that line. So you might as well make the most of it. Another example of this is if your boss won't promote you. Or if I use a friend as an example, they don't give you the raise that you think you deserve. Well, guess what? You can be upset about it all you want. You can be mad. You can be angry that you're not getting this promotion. You're not getting this raise. I had a lovely visit with a friend a couple weeks back. And I let them just let it all out. They were definitely upset that they didn't get the raise that they wanted. They only got a 3% raise. In fact, every single person at their office got a 3% raise, which she definitely didn't think was fair because she's brought in a lot of extra revenue to the company, has worked really hard, and they've talked about even giving her a promotion. But it's all like being dangled on a carrot. So she wants that raise that she feels she deserves. And she wants that promotion now. And so I said to her, hey, you can be upset about this all you want, but it doesn't mean that they have to change a thing. So I said, the better way to look at it is just be grateful that they gave you a 3% raise. Because a lot of people right now, they're losing their jobs. At least you have a job. But if you really feel that they're not going to give you this promotion, that they're not giving you the raise that you deserve, then take it into your own hands. Let yourself reclaim your power and realize that you can update your resume and you can look for a company that values you the way you feel you should be valued. It's the number one way to change the things at the workplace that you're at as well. Because let's say you actually do like working where you're working, but you do want that promotion, but that you do want that pay raise. If you go to your boss and say, hey, I got offered another job, and they're going to pay me 10% more than what you pay me. If your boss truly sees the value you bring, they're probably going to offer you 12% and give you that promotion. Because in today's day and age, sometimes it's really tough to find good employees. And if they really think you're good, they're not going to want to lose you. But when you take that control into your hands, it's definitely a much more empowering environment to be in. Now, this whole framework in general can be applied in most areas of our lives. And it's a practical tool for daily stressors, for fear of judgments, for emotional reactions, for comparisons. There's so many different ways in which we can use the let them, the let me theory to benefit our lives, to give us that better quality of life that we're looking for. So I'm going to break this down into those few different areas, starting with the stress. When we have stress in our lives, we sort of have like that fight or flight response. You have the amygdala part of the brain, which is your fear response. It makes you go into a defense mode. And then we have our prefrontal cortex, which is where our planning, our problem solving takes place. What the let them have theory does is it deactivates that alarm, that fear response, sort of slows down the amygdala. Let me is what allows us to use that critical part of our brain to plan and problem solve the issues that we're going through. So it allows us to take a moment to step back and take a deep breath. In the book, The Let Them Theory, Mel talks about this experience that we've all had. You're flying somewhere on a plane, maybe it's a bus, wherever the situation may be. In her instance, it was on a plane, and she was flying to speak somewhere, so she definitely didn't want to get sick. Behind her, there was a dude that was nonstop coughing, and she got all angry and shit. She turned around and gave him a dirty look and started being like, would you stop coughing? But ultimately, the best thing she can do is just take that into her own ownership. Yes, it's rude that this guy is coughing all over the place. He doesn't put on a mask. That would be the best thing to do. Obviously, he needs to get somewhere too. So putting on a mask, being conscious of your other people around you, that would be the nicest thing he could do. But if he's not going to do it, guess what you can do? You can put on a mask yourself so you don't inhale everything he's putting out into the plane. And then you can just put on some headphones and tune it out. Once you're starting to listen to some relaxing music, or you're watching a movie and you're not breathing in that stuff anymore because you put on your mask, guess what? You're probably not going to get sick, and you're not even hearing it anymore, so it's not going to bother you. So it's, again, let them cough, but let me put myself in a scenario where this doesn't impact me at all. Another part of this, another topic where the let them, let me theory can, impact our lives is on a daily basis. Apparently people have about 70,000 daily thoughts. It's hard enough to control our 70,000 thoughts that we have every day. Trying to control somebody else's 70,000 thoughts seems near impossible. People are going to think bad thoughts about you. Let them. Let them think whatever they're going to think about you, because it doesn't matter what you do. You're never going to be able to get every single person on this planet to think only positive thoughts about you. It's not going to happen. What you can focus on is letting yourself live a way that makes you proud. Do what makes you happy, not what makes other people happy. And, in the book, she has an example of this, and it's a tool for dealing with difficult family, about essentially just understanding why they hold these specific opinions, and then let them continue to hold that opinion. So Mel's mom was very disapproving of Mel's partner. I think her partner's name's Chris. And she doesn't understand why her mom feels this way. It's not anything to do with Chris, actually. She likes the guy. She thinks he's a very nice individual. What it was is that it triggered what she did with her family, is that she moved away. And now she was seeing her daughter do the same thing. And she always dreamed of having, her daughter nearby. But she knew by Mel dating Chris and then getting married to him that they were most likely going to move away. And that's what upset her mom. But eventually they had a conversation of this, and they figured out what it was. So there was a better understanding of it. But either way, she couldn't make her mom happy. She's not going to just stick around for the rest of her life just to appease her. But having an understanding of it made the situation a lot better. Again, we can't control what other people think of us. If I was incredibly concerned about what every single person thinks of me, there is no chance in hell I would start this podcast. It's just not going to happen. I know there's going to be some people who, I've been friends with, who are going to think things that I say on here are ridiculous. They're not going to support it. They're going to be like, who do you think you are talking about all these different topics? What makes you special? What makes your voice the one to be heard? And honestly, I don't really care. If people don't like the messages I'm putting out to the world, that's okay. They don't have to listen. Because there'll be plenty of people who will love the messages that I'm providing, the tools that I'm putting out there. And those are the people that I'm doing it for. Let the people who enjoy my messages continue to enjoy it. And those who don't, they don't have to. Another area is people's emotional reactions. Sometimes people react in different ways because it impacts them emotionally. Mel puts it as, an adult having like an 8-year-old reaction. We all do it. We all sometimes react in ways we shouldn't. We have a response that's more like a childhood-like emotional maturity. We have tantrums. We do silent treatments. You see it in all relationships where people, they don't know how to respond to it, so they just go silent. Let them have their tantrums. Let them have those silent treatments. The right decision often feels wrong if it upsets other people. But again, we can't control other people. We have to do what's right for us. The example she uses in this book, I hope nobody has to go through this, but I'm sure it happens more than we like to wish. There's this guy he's about to marry, his fiance, and he's getting this like horrible, horrible feeling like he's making the worst decision of his life. But, he doesn't want to upset his family. He doesn't want to upset her family. They've put so much money into it. And so he's thinking about just going through this wedding just because it's going to upset other people. It's going to hurt their feelings. But at some point down the road, he's going to hurt their feelings anyways. So you might as well just get over it and do it then. Be honest, even if it's painful, because this decision isn't just better for his future. It's just better for everybody's future. I recently had a falling out with a friend, and, it could have been handled much better. I ended up getting a silent treatment. But it's totally fine. They're allowed to react the way that they want to react. But I have to accept that unless we can have a conversation, there's really no way of fixing the issue. So if they want to go the silent treatment route, that's okay. But if they want to have a conversation, that dialogue is there and available if they want to do it. But again, I can't control other people's emotions and the way that they deal with things. All I can control is what I can. So I can put out that hand to have that conversation. And if they don't want to have it, then I need to let it be what it is. And then I think this is a huge thing that everybody does, especially with Instagram and social media. And I think it can be, I think what Mel goes over here is actually quite a good way to look at this. We often are constantly comparing ourselves with other people. Now, there are some comparisons which are good, but there's also some that are bad. She has two different types. She calls it torture comparison and teacher comparison. Torture comparison are fixed attributes like height, innate talent, beauty, things that realistically you're not going to change. Yes, there are surgeries you can do to get taller. Most people aren't going to do it. There's plastic surgery to change the way you look. Some people are just really good. There's like Steph Curry, my favorite basketball player. He is gifted. He also tries really, really hard and does a lot of work. But if I'm just jealous of his amazing talents, it's not going to do anything for me. I'm never going to be a Steph Curry. I'm also too old to get into the NBA now, and I'm not as tall as I would have liked to be. It was a dream when I was growing up. But there are different types of comparisons, such as skills and habits. When you see things that people have learned and are putting that to work, people going to the gym, and you be like, wow, I really want to go to the gym. I want to be like them in that. Those are great things because they're things that you can actually change. They're things that you have control over. So when you're looking at your social media posts and you see somebody with, their trust fund and all this money, guess what? You're probably never going to get a trust fund if you don't already have it. So don't compare yourself to things like that. Compare yourself to things that you can actually use as motivation, as a driver to change areas of your life in a positive way. Let them have their fixed attributes. Let them show me what's possible. And then let me learn and get to work. An example of this that she uses in the book, there's this designer named Molly, and she's jealous of her neighbor's social media success. Her neighbor started a similar business, but she doesn't have the expertise that she does. But what her neighbor had was that expertise in social media, and so her business took off much more rapidly, even though she was not as good of a designer. So what she should have looked at it as is let her succeed. Let me use that anger as the fuel to learn and improve my own social media marketing skills. Because by doing that, now she's actually bettering her life. She can just continue to stay mad and frustrated about something that she can't change. It's probably not going to do anything. But what she can do is focus on learning and growing and becoming better at marketing. And then with her already superior design skills, in the long run, she'll have a much better business. So that's the overall framework of the let them, let me theory. Now we're going to use that to apply to the areas which I think have impacted me the most, and I think impact people in general on an extremely great deal. And to start that off, we're going to go with navigating adult friendships. Adult friendships, they're different than what our friendships were like when we were kids. It's nothing the same. When you're a kid, you're in a class, you meet people all the time, you spend days with them, it's easy to get to know people. When you're an adult, it's a difficult thing because it actually takes a lot of effort. And friends come, they go. Mel talks about something called the Great Scattering, which is the post-education, early adulthood, where friends disperse, life paths diverge. Friendships shift from a group sport, easy, where it's structured, to an individual sport where it requires effort. For myself, I'd noticed this for a long time. It wasn't until really New Zealand where I actually started to put in effort to maintaining and growing a group of friends. I was constantly on the move. I was traveling, going to different places all around the world. And I sort of neglected my friendships back home. But I was no longer in university. I was no longer in high school. I was constantly going to different places. I was on my own. But I also wasn't putting in the effort to try to make new friends and stuff like that. And so Mel also talks about these 3 pillars of friendship. There's proximity. How often you're actually physically near to these friends in your life. She says she doesn't, it's a study in the book, but it says it's about 74 hours to create a casual friend and 200 plus hours needed for a close friendship in adulthood. If you're not living in the same city and you meet somebody, it's really hard to get up to 74 hours, let alone 200 plus hours. So that's already one of the challenges, is proximity. And then there's timing, being in a similar stage in a life. Often, a lot of our friends, once we get into the adult world, come from a co-working environment, but sometimes vastly different ages. And when there are those different ages, it might make it harder to connect deeply, despite, being very close to people. Sometimes we're lucky we're in a work environment where everybody's around our same age, where they're not married yet, where they don't have kids. If you have an environment like that, the odds are you're going to get along great. But if you are working with a bunch of people who are married, who have kids, who are not retired, obviously they wouldn't be working in that case, but, are in their later years, maybe have grandchildren, it's hard to relate to them. You're at different stages in your life. It's not going to be the same. And then there is just that overall energy, that intangible click or vibe. This is something that can shift as people grow as well. And it really can't be forced. There are just sometimes when you meet people and it's just like, wow, you're amazing. You really hit it off with them. It's like phenomenal. And then there's other people you meet like, oh, I'd like to stay away. A 10-foot pole in between would be great. Some people you hit it off with, some people you don't. And sometimes you hit it off with people earlier on in your life and it starts to fade away because your interests change, your hobbies change, your career path change. And again, the different stages. Friends are going to come, they're going to go. It's going to change as time goes on. But yeah, so examples of this, when it comes to that proximity, about the 74 hours for casual friends, 200 hours for close friends, it's harder to achieve these sets of hours when you have everything else going on in your life and you live in different places. In Canada, I was constantly on the move. So again, I didn't have as many close friends as I wish I would have. Here in New Zealand, when I got here, I put in a lot of effort to spend more time with friends. And I feel as a result, I've made some really close friendships. But all the close friendships are people here in New Zealand because they're actually physically close. They're people I can see on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. Back in Canada, those friendships, they're harder to maintain because we just don't get to see each other as much. My best friend back there, I've seen since leaving Canada 2 times in about 5-6 years. It's just not going to happen as much because we live thousands of kilometers apart. And then timing. In the book, Mel talks about her daughter working at this one office where everybody seems to be a lot older than her, married, and has kids. And so it was really tough for her daughter. She was struggling to connect with these people. But it's just because they were at different stages of their lives. Most of my friends at 35 right now are all people who have never been married, or if they were married, they're now divorced, and they don't have kids. Yes, there are some people that, don't fit that mold, but, they also don't have their kid full time. I don't think any of my friends who have kids have full custody of their children. And so they have that time to be able to spend together, to be able to build a friendship. And then when it comes to energy, sometimes an example that she uses is college roommates. When they're in college, they're loving life. They're partying together. They're having a grand old time. They're doing all these things to do together in between classes. But after graduation, living together, the energy is off because they're both growing in different directions. One person might be still trying to live in the past. One person might be trying to actually advance their career. And when you're not doing the same thing, when you're not, furthering your education and you're doing different stuff at that point, it just might not feel the same. And so that's often why, these friendships fade. And friendships fade. It's not personal. Friendships fade due to the shifts in these 3 pillars. It's not a personal rejection. And it does lead to hurt. But again, we're not going to stay in the same stages the rest of our lives. Again, I had that falling out with a friendship. They sort of felt like they were in a different place than I was. From the little bit I understand this, they were moving a step forward in their relationships. I'm not quite at that same stage, and that's okay. But maybe that is part of the problem which made that shift. We're all going through different stages in our lives. So when they are starting to drift, we need to let them drift, form new bonds, or let our dynamic change. Let me manage my emotions maturely, assume good intent. They could also just be overwhelmed, and that might be why things are shifting. So if they come back in the future, let them come back in the future. But don't keep score. Just focus on what you can have control over. Again, people are going to shift. People are going to go away. They might come back. They might not. Whatever the situation is, just let it be. And then focus on what you can have control over, which is going to be our next concept. But first, let's go through a few examples here. And so Mel talks about her friend group. which shifted when she moved to another city. And then she had a friend move to that same city. So her group of friends, she sort of introduced them to. But then that friend that came into the city actually moved right across the street from where her other friends were. And they actually started hanging out more than she hung out with them. And then she started to feel excluded. And it wasn't because they didn't want her to have it involved. It's just they lived across the street. They're going to see each other pretty much on a daily basis. So they started hanging out more and stuff like that. And she started to feel excluded. But it wasn't personal. It was just a natural shift based off proximity. And another example is friends not texting back. I am the worst when it comes to texting. I've had some of my friends call me out on that shit. And that's okay. I don't love being on my phone. And I don't love texting all that much. But if somebody texts me and I notice in just a little thing, it's like, oh, you want to hang out? I'll respond almost instantly. But if somebody doesn't respond, let them not text back. Don't assume it's a slight. They could just be overwhelmed. They could have a lot going on in their lives. So let them have that space. Again, if it's a true friendship, they're going to reach back out at some point. And if they don't, that's okay too. Whatever it is, let it be. Because again, you can't necessarily change it. And sending them a billion, text messages to try to get them to respond is probably not going to add to it, especially if it is just a period of time that they're being overwhelmed. You can just finish it off with a supportive message, be like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Not sure if you've just been busy or if stuff's going on, but just know if you ever need somebody to talk to, feel free to reach out. And just leave it at that. They don't reach out, they don't reach out. If they reach out, cool. If they respond just saying I'm overwhelmed, awesome. But constantly trying to reach out and focus on this negative situation that you're going through because your friend's not texting back is not going to help you in any sort of way. And yeah, and the last example that she uses is her own distancing. She was due to move and work. She wasn't proactive with her old friends, illustrating her distance isn't always ill intent. She just had a lot going on. She moved and she had work going on. And just so those friendships faded. I've definitely done that over the years. I've moved a lot and I haven't done the best at keeping in touch with people, but it's because of, again, that proximity. I'm just not there. But this is where the really empowering part of the let them, let me theory comes when it comes to adult friendships. And it's creating new friendships. Be proactive. Go first. There are a ton of adults all around you who wish they had more friends. I've talked to numerous people who feel the exact same way. When you're an adult, again, trying to hit that 200 hours, that 74 hours, those are tough milestones to hit. So if you feel like you're not in the place you want to be when it comes to friendship, you need to be actively creating an environment you want to be in. Mel suggests a year. She says, give it a year in a new environment. If you're still in that same environment, give it a year. When you actively decide, I'm going to start to make more friends, put myself in a better environment, give it a year. When I moved to New Zealand, that was one of my number one things I tried to do, is just put myself in a better environment when it came to friendships. And I'd say it took about a year. But by a year into living here, I had the largest group of friends I've ever had at around 15 people. I can still remember that first birthday party here, and it was incredible. But I put a lot of work into it. I took the initiative to try to make new friends by reaching out to people, by asking people if they wanted to do certain activities, if they wanted to go and play board games, if they wanted to go on a hike. But if you don't give it some time, if you only give it like a week and you're like, I still can't make friends, that's probably not a realistic time frame. And another thing to do is just cultivate the habit of going first. Initiate the contact. Introduce yourself. Leverage those weak ties. She talks about baristas and neighbors to build that social network that we're looking for. When I came to New Zealand, it was a lot of board game meetups, but I constantly went to them. Every Saturday at 12, we had one at, the local board game cafe. I would go to that, start seeing people there on a regular basis. Be like, hey, we're really hitting it off. Do you guys think you go do trivia together once? I did that with a group of people. And then we started doing trivia on a weekly basis, which is more of those hours and building those better friendships. But, I took that initiative to say, hey, we should do this together. They were all like, yeah, this is great. Again, the odds are they're at this event because they also want to meet people. So take that initiative, put it out there. Some people will say no. That's okay. Let them be awkward or busy. But let me keep trying, be understanding, and just trust your intuition that if you keep on going with it, you're going to make a great group of friends. So some examples that the author uses, or Mel uses, is after a year of loneliness for her, after they moved into this one city, her daughter forced her to knock on her neighbor's door, Mia, because they actually met earlier in the time frame, but just nothing ever sort of came of it. But she always felt like, oh, that was a really cool neighbor. That was a really cool person. So they were going for a walk, and she's like, why don't you just go knock on her door? And she did, and now it's formed a great friendship. And I sort of said this when I moved to New Zealand too. I put myself out there a lot. I could have came here and just sort of, I actually made this point to my girlfriend at the time because I did end up starting to date somebody quite soon after I came to New Zealand. I'm like, I need to make sure that even with our relationship, I put in the effort to make a group of friends. And I'm so happy that I did, because if I didn't, and when that relationship failed, I would have felt very alone. But, I put out that effort by going to these meetups, meeting people, and trying to initiate board game nights, hiking, other activities, little road trips to sort of build those friendships. She also talks about coffee shop connections. A lot of people like going to their coffee shops on a daily basis. When you're there, the odds are if you keep going at the same time before work, you're seeing the same people on a regular basis. Why not talk to them? Why not say hello? She was able to meet her barista. His name was Kevin. Some other regulars, Gregory and Jordan, she speaks about. And ultimately, she ends up creating a really close friendship with somebody from there, David. And that's all from just a local thing that she did all the time. She went to the coffee shop and she met somebody. Just recently, I actually met a new person to do trail running with. We were out on the trail together. And based off where we turned and stuff like that, I knew that we were running fairly close in pace. I was a little bit faster, but it was close enough where, especially if I just want to go out on an easy, enjoyable run, but actually social as well, this person could probably hold close enough pace or at a pace that I was willing to slow down to. So I, said to them, hey, I don't know if you want somebody to go running with sometime, but we actually run pretty similarly. And they were totally keen. So we started doing some runs together, and that was great. But if I didn't put myself out there and ask, then I'd still be running alone, because my original trail running friend, destroyed their knee, which is a little unfortunate. Can't wait till they're back fully recovered and we can hit the trail some more. But again, in the meantime, if I don't put myself out there, I'm not going to meet somebody to continue running with. And group creation. I actually have one friend who is phenomenal at this. It's like, we actually just went on a hike yesterday. Yes, we went on a hike yesterday. And originally I just asked her and her boyfriend if they wanted to go for a hike. The boyfriend wasn't available. And she's like, hey, do you mind if I invite some other people? One of the people I know quite well, two of the other people I don't. But by inviting those other people, it's an opportunity to just meet more like-minded people who like to hike. And so whatever your activity is, be proactive in trying to get a bunch of people similar who like that activity, and you can expand the group. And you can tell your friends, if they're bringing out some, like, they can bring their own friends too and just grow. And then you might meet a person through another person and grow your groups that way. So when it comes to friendships, just know that it doesn't matter where you are in life. It doesn't matter the stages, the proximity, the energy. Take ownership of the situation. If you don't have enough friends, you can always make more. They're going to come, they're going to go, and that's okay. But it starts with you. Let friends fade, go, come, whatever it is. But you take the ownership, be proactive, go first. Next part of this whole thing is that relationships on a higher level, managing those intimate relationships. Relationships are tough. They're extremely tough. I'm 35 years old, not married. Yes, I'm dating somebody right now, but they're not easy. They are definitely a struggle. And one of the things that has been a challenge for me, especially in my last real relationship, was in motivating change in other people's, influencing, not pressuring people. It's something that we always end up, or I think most people end up in relationships, is that nagging to try to get people to change things about them. It's not always going to happen. And I think that root of constantly nagging sometimes makes people resist because it takes away their control. It is more of a pain than a pleasure. So it often backfires. Because again, people are only going to change when they feel like it. And you nagging somebody all the time is not going to do it. Maybe if you do threaten to leave and you do leave, maybe it might get them to change so that way you take them back. But again, that's not the best approach. This next concept, I wish I would have known in that last relationship. I think it could have changed a lot of it. I don't think I handled how to influence the change I was looking for in the way I should have. I think I approached it from a very negative standpoint, in that I was nagging and I wasn't even getting to see their perspective. So Mel puts out this, what she calls the ABC loop of influence. And I think it's quite beautiful because it takes the control and puts it, it takes you out of trying to control other people and it gives the ownership to them, which empowers them and is more likely going to get them to make the change than you constantly nagging on them. So if there's a particular topic that you and your partner have been arguing over and over again, it starts off with apologizing. Apologizing for that past pressure. Apologize for that constant nagging. But then get curious and ask open-ended questions. She calls it like motivational interviewing to spark internal reflection. Get a better understanding of why they don't want to exercise, they don't want to eat healthier, why they, don't want to try for a different career even though they hate the job that they have. Try to get an understanding of what it is. And then once you've understood as best you can, back off. Stop pressuring. Just observe the behavior and model the desired change. If, let's say you are not overweight at all and your partner is overweight and you want them to eat healthier, yet you still eat like shit because you just are one of those people who don't gain weight, probably not going to ever motivate them to make that change. But if you want them to eat healthier, if you're starting to make a lot more salads, if you're starting to not eat as much sugar, things like that, the more you model it, the more likely they are to, be curious of whatever it is you're eating, especially if you make it look good. And then when they do notice that that dish you made that's actually extremely healthy looks fantastic and they're like, can I have a bowl? Celebrate that small progress immediately. And then continue to model the change. So it's apologize and ask open-ended questions, back off from the pressure, and observe the behavior, and then celebrate any small progress and model that change. So let them accept them as they are. Let me model a change and use the ABC loop patiently. So again, in the book, I sort of just went over one of the examples, the unhealthy partner, your partner not eating healthy, they're not exercising. Understand what it is. And to them, the realistic thing is it's probably more painful for them to, make those changes than what they're willing to put through, because it's more pleasurable to sit on the couch and watch TV and eat the bag of chips. In the long run, it probably will bring them pleasure when they can do things that they, haven't been able to do. But in the immediate, there's a lot more pleasure behind it. So get an understanding of what they're going through. And then model those changes. And when they join in for a walk, when they join in for, that delicious dinner, when they take that healthy habit on that you've been modeling, just celebrate that win. When you have like maybe a coworker who just works, never takes a break. And then you have another group that might at lunchtime go for daily walks. But over time, they're like, wow, you guys always come back so refreshed, looking so good, so energized, ready for that second half of the day. I'm so tired in the second half. You mean that social contagion of, that social group that goes out for the walks? Eventually they might be like, you know what, maybe I want to start doing these walks. And then another example she uses is her teenager's messy room. I wish my parents would have used this same strategy with me. But apologize for the nagging of constantly cleaning her bedroom. Ask the teen how the messy room makes her feel, and then back off. And then celebrate when just like a small corner is tidied. Yeah, my parents never did that approach. Again, this is new stuff. I wonder if that would have changed things. I don't know. I know now as older, I'm definitely a lot cleaner than I would have been as a kid. But it would be interesting to see if that would have changed the way I approached cleaning my bedroom. One of the big examples for me, though, here is probably with my last big relationship here in New Zealand. There were two things that I really nagged my partner on, and that was being late and being on her phone. It was bad. Like, I felt like this is ultimately why the relationship ended. I just felt like I kept on bringing it up, and nothing would change. And I'm very curious how this could have changed the whole relationship. Because minus these two things, it was actually a pretty nice relationship. We had a lot of good times together. But these two things drove me nuts. When it comes to time, I'm a little bit anal. And when I'm with somebody, I want to be present with them. I never really had an understanding of why she chose to be this way. I never asked. Maybe if I would have had a better understanding, I would have reacted completely different to this. I don't think I ever asked once. And that was definitely a failing on me. I think I just always said why I didn't like it or why it bothered me, but I never got an understanding of why they felt they had to always be on social media, why they felt, they couldn't be there on time. I don't know the situation, like what their reasoning would be. I have absolutely no clue. But I'm curious what this would have been like. And I look forward to this, if it's with the person I'm currently dating, if this comes up, trying to put this into practice. Because I'm curious what the result might be. But yeah, I wonder if this would have changed the relationship completely. Because again, it was just constant nagging. And I wish I could have done it differently. But again, this is the cool thing in life. We grow and learn, and we're constantly trying to better ourselves. And we can always think of how we can apply new tools that we learned to our past, but we can't change the past. We can only use those tools to better our future. But I know in the past, nagging is the solution I went to, and it wasn't a very good solution. So trying the ABC loop would have been a much better option. And I look forward to giving it a try in the future. Another type of relationship, or another area where relationships can be benefited by the let me theory, is in supporting people who are struggling, not trying to rescue people. You can't always want someone's healing more than they do. You can't solve their problems. When you try to rescue people, it prevents their resilience. It enables their justifying, their supporting of problematic behaviors. It enables the hindering of their recovery. Again, we can't change other people. Only people can change when they want to change. So we need to allow people to go through these struggles. We can support them, but we can't rescue them. So one of the things that Mel talks about is providing support, but with clear conditions, especially if it's like financial. She talks about like, if you're struggling with addiction and you want to go to therapy and your parents are willing to, pay for you to go, but they want to have reports on how it's going, it's only fair. They're financially involved. They should be able to, get that feedback. But we need to create a environment that is conducive to healing, that is proactive, that is of thoughtful actions. But again, if they don't thrive in that environment, you can't just keep on trying to save them. At some point, they have to take the ownership on themselves because, again, until they get to that point, they hit their potentially rock bottom. They're not going to try to change if what you're doing for them is not already helping. So let them struggle. Let them face their consequences. Be on their own timeline for healing. But offer what you can do on the let me side of things is offer empowering support. Set firm boundaries and create a nurturing environment. Don't crack when things get tough for them to try to save them. Stay firm with what you said you're going to do for them. Make it a good environment, but stay firm. Some of the examples that Mel uses, I don't really have any examples that I can use on this podcast personally. So I'm going to use all the ones that she has provided here. But one of her daughters had really bad anxiety and in the middle of the night would always come into the room. And initially she rescued her by letting her sleep on, the floor and enabling an avoidance of dealing with that anxiety. But through therapy, they taught that the proper solution was to comfort, then walk her back to her room so that way she could face the fear, but do it in a supportive manner, not just letting her avoid that situation. And by doing that, it actually helped their daughter face that anxiety and overcome it. Another example of this is Chris. So Mel's husband had a restaurant business and it was failing immensely. And so he went to his brother and tried to get a bailout, and his brother refused. He refused to loan him money for the failing business, and it forced Chris to hit that rock bottom and change his life, not use alcohol, get out of debt. But he offered emotional support. If you need somebody to come chat with, if you need somebody to talk these hard times through, come talk to me. I'll be there for you. So it wasn't a financial rescue. It was an emotional rescue, an emotional support, per se. And another example is just when people are dealing with really bad situations. So in this one, she says in a postpartum support, but it could be anything. If somebody's grieving, if somebody's, struggling with just personal trauma, you can just take some things to help them, such as you can go over and, maybe clean, you do some cooking, organize outings to get them out of their house, create a healing environment. Again, you don't have to wait for them to necessarily ask for it. You can take that initiative and support them in an empowering way to put them in a better environment. But again, you can't get them to change until they're ready to. So just give them a better environment to make those changes. And so the last part of emotional or in intimate relationships, which I think this one applies to me potentially the most, is in dating and commitment, choosing the love that you deserve. This one really hits home to me because, to be honest, over the last couple years, the things that she talks about in this next section are things that I've constantly been doing over and over and over again. And there's this little bit of dialogue, which if you work in to someone you're dating, it could really change the tone of where that relationship is heading. And it can protect you a lot from future hurt and put you in control rather than somebody else. So let's dig into this one a little bit deeper because I think it's a really helpful tool. But dating is like self-discovery. Behaviors reveal truth more than words. If they don't like you, you'll know. If not, you'll be confused. And don't chase potential. The one thing I will say from this, even though she says behaviors reveal truth, I do think sometimes words reveal truth too. So I think it's about balancing the two of those. Over the past couple of years, I've dated people who have said certain things and their actions don't follow. And then I've had people who have acted certain ways, but their words don't follow. So I do think you need to look at the two of them. Because like the last person I dated before the current one, the behaviors made me feel like it was going to be such an amazing relationship. The words didn't necessarily follow. And again, that's why I was confused. But if you are confused, that's where there's probably a discrepancy and you need to look at that relationship a little bit closer. We can't constantly be chasing the potential of what somebody could be, the potential of potentially being an amazing partner. We need to look at people who they are in that moment. If you're trying to chase after what somebody could be, if they just do this, if they just do that, if they change their job, if they're, in a happier environment, if whatever it is, it's probably not going to work. If you're always chasing unavailable partners, you need to examine your pattern. Maybe you need some therapy. Maybe you need to be single. For commitment, have the commitment conversation, which is suggested by a person named Matthew Hussey. Focus on the values of your time and your desires, which I love because to me, time is one of the things that I value the most. But this is something that I've gone through. I've been typically going for people who are fun and definitely emotionally unavailable. Because when I have that free time, I want to be doing things that are enjoyable. I want to be doing fun activities. I want to be enjoying life because I'm working hard with all the other stuff I'm doing. So that was the pattern I was constantly going for, is the unavailable. But if they're unavailable, after 4 to 6 weeks, if that's what you're sensing, this conversation that Matthew Hussey suggests is a beautiful conversation to have. So again, if you're ever dating somebody and you're feeling like there's some sort of discrepancy between the behaviors and the words, Mel would say more so the words. I would say both. But if there's a discrepancy between the two and you're feeling a little bit confused, that's when you need to be a little bit conscious of it and don't be chasing that potential. And if it is feeling like the partner is unavailable, within probably 4 to 6 weeks, if you're feeling that, you need to have this conversation because it's a gem. So let them show you who are through their actions or inactions. Let them say no to commitment. Let me interpret behavior at face value or a discrepancy in behavior and words to be honest with myself and withdraw from this unreciprocated pursuit and choose to end it if my needs aren't met. So when people are giving you mixed signals, so let's say here are some examples. Yeah. If they text often but never makes plans, they might just be using you as their distraction from what's going on in their lives, their projects that they don't want to be doing. And then let them text. Let them keep on doing it. But let me be honest with myself if this isn't leading to a real relationship. So I dated somebody for about 6 months last year. And honestly, when we hung out, it was the best. You would think that they were totally into me. I was totally into them. It was awesome. But when it came to the words that they were saying, it was just the complete opposite. But I kept on going because it was just so much fun. But I should have been honest with myself. They were saying things. I was probably just a distraction for all the other stuff going on in their lives, which is what it was. And if I would have been honest with myself, I would have saved myself, let's say 4.5 months if I would have done this after 6 weeks. Now, the conversation that you should have. So in the book, it's a little bit longer. I have like a shorter version that I chose to take from this. But if after 6 weeks, you're feeling like they're just wasting your time and it's not going to happen, just have this conversation because it puts you in control. And then you can make your decision based off their result, their response. But say this, or you can go to the book and have the long version. I value my time and energy. I only want to invest more if we're going to the next level. If you don't see the same thing, this has been great. But I need to choose people who want what I want. I think this is an amazing script to follow if you ever feel like you and the person you're dating are not on the same page. Again, I don't think you should do this after like a week or so. And if things are going great and they're reciprocating in the same ways you are, I don't think you necessarily even need to bring up this conversation. But if there does seem like there's some sort of discrepancy between the effort you're putting in, the effort they're putting in, you're confused at all, this is a really great script to throw in there. I definitely know if I'm ever feeling this way in the future, I definitely will use this conversation as well. Because again, it shows you that you value certain things in yourself and you're not going to let somebody take advantage of that. And then it puts them in control. You just get to listen to hear what they say. If they don't say what you want, then you just have to stay firm and realize I'm not going to change them. I can't change them. But what I can change is my situation. Even if it hurts, let that person go because, again, you're not dating their potential. You're dating who they are today. And lastly, if you're always the one before the one or the dater fixer-upper, probably should be single for, a year, heal your own patterns. Because, again, if you're healed, you're going to be a lot more attractive to who your one is. And moving into pretty much the last section of this book, it's the last chapter. It's every ending is a new beginning. So the first concept is resolvable issues versus deal breakers. Loving the person, not the potential, which again is what we just spoke about. Not the potential of a person, but who they actually are. They might never change. So if you're not happy with the way they are, you might need to end the relationship. So we talked about the ABC loop before. Well, there's 2 more steps to it. There's the D and the E. So can you accept the person exactly as they are now, assuming that they won't change? Because apparently, according to Gottman's research, 69% of relationships problems are unresolvable due to personal dreams, due to personalities. So just know that a lot of these problems, they're never going to change. So if they can't change, these are the next 2 steps. Again, we went through ABC loop before. Here's the D and the E. And this is something that you should do after about 3 months of ABC with no change. So D is decide if the unresolved issue is a deal breaker. Can you live with this forever if it never changes? If you can live with it, cool. If you can't, not so cool. But after 3 months, you can go a little bit longer if you want to give it some more time, depending on what the matter is that you're facing. But like 3 to 6 months, you need to either end your complaining, fully accept them and the issue. So end the bitching. I think those are the exact words that Mel uses. Or you got to end the relationship. If things aren't changing the way you want after 3 to 6 months of using this ABCDE loop, they're probably not going to change. So you need to accept them as they are, stop the nagging, and accept them, or end the relationship. Let them be who they are, even if it's not changing. Let me decide if it's a deal breaker and act accordingly. Accept or end. The examples that Mel uses, apparently she's like over the top ADHD. And Chris really struggled with it for a while. But over time has accepted her disorganization, and that is not going to change. It's not a deal breaker for him. He says, let Mel be Mel. He ends the bitching. You're going to have to do the same thing. If you love the person and you can deal with the matter that, is not probably going to get resolved, keep it going. Let them be them. But let's say it's like having children. One partner wants to have kids and the other definitely doesn't. This is more likely a deal breaker, requiring one to give up a core dream. Let them not want kids. Let me end it to pursue my dreams. That's a huge thing that breaks up a lot of relationships. Having wanting kids and not wanting kids. Again, we don't want to take away people's dreams or hopes, the things that they really want in life. So if it's a constant issue, you nag and be like, I really want to have children. I really want to have children. And they don't. That's when after, 3 to 6 months of discussions on it and sort of seeing where it is, if it's not going to change, it probably isn't. Maybe it's one thing if it's like really early in your 20s, because I know I personally have changed. In my early 20s, it was a definite no. Later 20s, still most likely no. And then in my 30s, I started to be more open-minded to the idea of children. But yeah, if it's something that's super important to you and it's a deal breaker, you got to end it. And children is probably one of those examples. And the last example that Mel uses is a partner moving for a career. She had a friend where the partner was moving to London, but they're from Atlanta, and she also values being near her family. You need to decide, is, being across the world or across the Atlantic Ocean a deal breaker? Because when you move there, you're not going to see your family as much as you want to, especially if you're living in the exact same town. So is it a deal breaker? If it isn't, you move and end the complaining. If it's not, you end the relationship. Those are your options. So whenever you're in, you fall in this ABC loop and it doesn't work out, and you get through it all, and you have those two options, D and E, after 3 months. Ultimately, when I look back to my relationship, which I spoke about earlier, about the constant nagging of being late and being on the phone. Ultimately, this is what I did. In the end, I decided these are deal breakers. I ended the relationship. But I am very curious if I would have done it in a different approach, such as the ABC model. If maybe it might have resolved itself in the first place, and then it wouldn't have been a deal breaker, and then the relationship could have continued. It's impossible to know now. But again, I do think this tool is a much better tool for dealing with these difficult situations. Again, you're still in control in the end. You still make that final decision, whether it's a deal breaker or not. We always do. But it's done in a more empowering way. Now, through life, in these situations where you do decide to end relationship or people decide to end relationship with you, you're going to deal with heartbreak. Heartbreak is grief. Time alone doesn't necessarily heal. It's what you do with that time that does. When you go through these tough situations, you need to take actionable steps. You need to remove those triggers, refresh the space, lean on support, fill your calendar, embrace a personal challenge. Ask yourself, if the love of my life was around the corner, how would I spend my time now? Then you need to let them. You need to let them go. You need to accept that this is the ending. And let me grieve, cry, feel the pain. Then let me take that active step to heal and rebuild. So examples of what you can do in these situations. All those photos, those gifts, contact information, get rid of it all. There's no point in keep on looking at all those photos up around the wall of your past relationship. It's only going to make you hurt longer. You got a stuffed animal on the bed and it's, nice to cuddle up with, but it makes you remind that your partner probably shouldn't have that on the bed. So remove all those things that are going to trigger those emotions. And then set yourself a personal challenge. Train for a race, learn a new skill like, guitar or piano. For myself, after that 6 month of relationship that I was super into or dating that I was super into, but clearly there was that discrepancy in the way that we were feeling. After that, I decided I'm going to go and try to run an ultra marathon. And so at the end of this year, I'm going to run a 100K race. Again, I've set myself a personal challenge, something that I can work towards. And then future focus, living well now as it's preparing to meet the love of your life. What are new activities, new clubs you can join, new skills you can gain, where you can meet new people that are going to, maybe you'll meet the next love of your life there. Maybe you'll meet your new best friend. Whatever the case might be, putting yourself out there to enhance your future. So when you're dealing with these really tough times, these are what you need to do. Deal with that grief, that active healing, and prepare for that better future. So we're just about to wrap this podcast up. Last thing I just want to briefly go over is shifting to that internal control. Ultimately, the goal of the let them theory is shifting your locus of control from external to internal. This is your let me era. This is your chance to take control of your life, and it all starts with you. This is a really cool analogy, especially living in New Zealand where the weather is completely unpredictable. You can't control the sky. You can't control the weather. External factors, other people, everything around you, you can't control. When I go outside and I do my door-to-door sales, it might piss down rain on me. I can't stop it. I still need to do my sales. I still need to go door to door. But what I can control is the way that I navigate beneath that storm. I can bring an umbrella. I can put on a waterproof jacket. I can put on some waterproof boots. I can enjoy that rain. I can have fun. I can splash in the puddles. I can live it up. I still need to keep doing what I'm doing. But the thing I have control over to avoid that wetness is giving myself the tools, the umbrella, the rain jacket, the rain boots, to keep myself dry and able to perform at my highest level. True power and happiness comes from taking responsibility for your own life, your own choices, your own energy. You need to stop giving it away. So, to wrap this all up, these are the things that I want you to take away from this. You cannot control other people, only your responses to them. Let them free up your energy. Let me empowers you to use it wisely. Other people's behaviors is information about them. Don't make it all about you. Accept reality, including unfairness and others' unwillingness to change for your own personal peace. Your life is your responsibility. Go first to create the relationships and success you desire. What I want each and every one of you listening today to do is just to identify one area this week where you're trying to control the uncontrollable and practice saying, let them. Then choose one let me action you can take in response that empowers you. Start small. This is a practice. This is a skill that we're going to hone over time. So maybe it's just you in that car, the guy in front of you going extremely slow, and you're late for work. So what can you do? You can accept the fact that you're going to be late for work, but you can crank up that tunes. You can dance in the car. You can put a smile on your face. And when you do arrive late to work, at least you can be there in a good mood and be like, wow, you're late and you're in such a great mood. And then they'll just be so inspired by that great energy that they'll forget about you being late. That's all you can do. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I hope you guys were able to learn a lot from it. If you want to read the book in full, again, it's The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. I'll put the book in the description. You can also check out her website, melrobbins.com, for her podcasts, her courses, her books. But again, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope I'll see you back here in 2 weeks' time. But until then, let's put this into practice. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.